Yeah, good afternoon. And the one attending online, at least for one time, God's sake, turn on your camera so that I could just have a look at how does my optional kids look like. Yes. So feel free interacting. Okay. Yeah. So please do turn on your cameras. Come on, make it fast. Vaibhav. So coming to online. Okay, I'm just addressing you people. So in form of soft copy, you will be shared the lecture plan. I mean the topics, a brief of a syllabus. And you have the entire syllabus mentioned and every topic, subtopic. And it's not necessary I would go by the same order that's been listed. Okay. I just want to make it sure I'm not going by the same order. Okay. And I think in the last orientation, I already made it clear. We'll start with money and banking because most of you might have completed or covered the general studies part and it would be more comfortable to you, isn't it? So if I start with something like advanced micro, advanced macro, then it would be something really difficult for you, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. So the most interesting is what I would keep it for later. Okay. Yes. So what you would be offered in online, I mean, a soft copy is the syllabus, and you have the previous year questions that's been segregated on a year wise and also topic wise. In fact, chapter wise. So the purpose of giving you these things is at least for the first paper. If not for second paper, at least for the first paper, what I expect you is once a topic is done, let's say money and banking. So we discuss about monetary policy, we discuss about what is money, we discuss about banking, we discuss about pros and cons of banking, isn't it? The problems related to banking. We discuss about easy money policy, tight money policy, monetary policy investments. So 80% of what is being discussed in GS again would be repeated. So don't feel it boring, you just simply take it as a revision. And those students have a background in economics, the same thing I would like to say. If I ever happen to teach a concept, that is something you believe and you are, okay, you think you are already aware of it, just take it as a revision. Doesn't mean you don't need to go back and read and I'm just revising on, okay, for you itself. So be regular. Okay, because this is not exactly going to be what you have studied in your academics, maybe in your BA or MA as part of it. Okay, so some of it might have been covered, some of it might not have been covered. Or I might simply go for a different approach when coming with an example or when coming with an explanation of a topic, which might be different from your so-called professor. So henceforth, be regular. That's something I just want to insist. And the essence of giving you or handing out syllabus along with the previous papers, along with the, okay, topic wise is, once I complete a particular topic, let's say today we discussed about theories of money demand. Okay, so various theories related to money demand, like Fisher equation, Keynesian theory, is a Cambridge theory, no matter whatever it is. Just go through the corresponding topic and look at the question. And I don't ask you to write an answer without looking at book. Later, we would also pass on material. Okay, a bunch of books which has been compiled by us. And that is gonna cover almost all the topics, and it is being compiled from various standard textbooks itself. What are the books to purchase is what I will let you know. So just please don't go through online and simply search for books to read for Indian economics optional, and don't end up spending money for buying all the books, because the things required, because no one happened to Abhitak, no one happened to write a book especially for economics optional students, because there are very few students who prepare for economics optional and don't take the pain of simply compiling a book. The material is good enough. That's been compiled from various standard textbooks itself. So whenever I discuss a topic, what I expect is pick up the question, okay, and just refer the material and the class notes, and now try with writing an answer for that particular question. And that is something like a notes for that particular topic based upon the question. That's it. Okay. So like say Fisher equation, it comes under money supply, demand for money. That's it. And there might be a question related to it. So note down the question or simply note down the name of the topic and write the important points required on a A4 size sheet. That is going to help you for your revision. And that is how by the end of the entire first paper, we would have question, answer, or topic answer for it. That's it. And all that you need to do is revise only those things, and that is good enough for paper 1. That's it. So other than the topics mentioned in the syllabus, you would not expect any surprises in first paper. Any surprise in first paper. They would not ask any recent contribution which is not part of your syllabus as part of a first paper. No. And second paper is what we regularly go through in the newspaper. And as a result, okay, I think you might remember I've been saying in one of my orientation session, when it comes to second paper, every day, 10-15 minutes come se come is what we'll be discussing. Okay, is the mint articles that I would be sharing in the early in the morning. I would expect you to go through those articles before coming to the class. And every day I would revise these same articles. Okay, not necessarily all the articles I share. Those that are really worthy for our examination is what we'll discuss. So henceforth, on a daily basis, we'll have a discussion on some part and some aspects of a second paper. And that would comprehensively cover a good amount of syllabus in the next 3 to 4 months. And we'll just try to spend 1.5 months in revising the entire syllabus of second paper at the end of our session. Is that clear now? Got it? Yes. And have you ever, okay, every one of you happen to go through the syllabus? Huh? Okay. So some of you might understand what is being mentioned. For some of you, it might be, seems to be very strange, except few topics like money and banking. Every one of you might be aware of what is being mentioned. Public finance, it's very easy. International economics, you could understand lot many things. But there are topics like advanced micro, advanced macro, and then growth and development, which is quite new to you. And don't worry, it is my response to make those things easy and simple. In fact, part of it has been discussed in the class. The only thing is that I didn't simply name the economists who happened to coin that particular theory. That's it. Okay. So don't worry about those new things that we are going to encounter. And we are going to spend a decent amount of time for every topic. And no topic would be left as part of the syllabus. Clear? Following? And if you have any doubt, please do, okay, don't hesitate to interrupt me. So once you understand, revise it, that's it for the day. You would never forget because this is quite logical. Nothing to by heart. Don't ever try to by heart. Don't ever try to by heart. And if you really think something seems to be worthy by hearting and you're not able to, okay, figure it out, why is it so? What's the reason behind it? Do let me know. I would be happy to help even outside the class. Don't ever by heart unless until it is very much mandate. Certain things, okay, names has to be, isn't it? But what they say, you don't need to by heart. Okay, don't learn by simply by hearting any part of a Indian economy or first paper. Okay, yes. And I think I don't need to just simply go for a walk through the entire syllabus because later I'll do it on a topic by topic whenever I have to take it. Is that clear? Yes. So any doubts that you want to ask me or anything that you want to say, okay, or any inhibitions that you have? Some of you might be thinking, I don't have a background. That's a very common question. And I've been saying the same thing. Your background has nothing to do with it, whatever the option you choose. Okay. So, iske alawa, like I've been saying in the general studies class, that the only prerequisite to attend a general studies economy lecture or simply even optional lecture is common sense and basic 5th standard or let's say 10th standard math. That's it. Okay? Yeah. So shall we start? Okay. So I'm not going to start any specific topic as part of optional. So for the next one, at least come for 1 week. Will you be looking at our daily notes, answers? Okay. Yeah. So for a while, I'll just simply check how your approach is. Okay. So I will create a Telegram group. It's already been created. I would share it with you and you could post it. Okay. And that's the same thing I've been saying. You are expected to write a comprehensive answer or note. And don't worry about the word limit. Don't worry about the size content, isn't it? There is a theory. Go through the various standard textbooks and figure out what is being discussed in the lecture notes, class notes, and just try to come with a consolidated or a comprehensive answer or simply information for a particular topic so that you don't need to remember or revise n number of books later for a particular topic. That's what I mean to say. So it would be easy at the end of the day, you would have some 100 questions, 100 answers, or 100 topics, or 100 sheets. That would be easy to revise. That's the very basic essence. Okay. And if you're making any mistake, then I will let you understand and I will guide you. You don't worry. Got it? Yes. I'll be looking at it. No issue. Anytime you could post it. Mira, got it? Yes. So for the next 1 week, I'm not going to start any topic. Then what I'm going to do? I'm just going to give you a brief and introduction of certain terms, terminologies, and we'll try to master the art of drawing graphs. Okay. So if you master the art of drawing a graph, does mean a very good part of your job is done. The reason is the advantage when it comes to other arts, when it comes to economics is you don't need to write a great, okay, you know, to use a very great language. What is mostly expected in your answer sheet is whether your graph is really right and appropriate. And all that you need to do is explain the same graph in simple English language. That's it. So don't worry about your English communication skills, nothing to be worried. Whatever the graph, and I've been saying in one of my previous classes, when it comes to evaluating an answer sheet for paper 1, mostly the people look at whether your graph happens to be right or wrong. If that happens to go wrong, your answer is obviously go wrong because that's what you're explaining it. And if your graph happens to be right, 90% of the time people ignore going through your answers. Okay, the reason is the graph is what is being explained. That's it. So that's the reason. Okay, we'll spend some enough time and we'll try to draw different types of graphs. And I think you know the fact that we could only draw 2-dimensional graphs, isn't it? But in real world, there would be n number of variables that influences economy, right? Yes or no? There could be n number of variables that influences any economic factor, but we cannot bring all the things, right? Let's say savings of myself. What factors determine the savings of mine? Yes. What factors determine my savings? Huh? Yes. My income. Does my income happens to have any influence upon my savings? Yes or no? Isn't it? Okay. What else? Expenditures generally, isn't it? How much I will be spending it? Okay. Yes. Expenditures. And what else? The rate of interest in the market, isn't it? Because imagine no one in the market is willing to pay not more than a 0% rate of interest. No one is willing to borrow at a certain rate of interest. Then what's the point of saving money? What's the point of lending money? Isn't it? Am I right? So when you have lot many variables that influences my savings, I cannot bring in all the variables and try to simply draw a 2-dimensional graph, isn't it? And show how my savings happens to be influenced with all these kind of variables. Am I right? Yes or no? And that's a very common practice. If you could recollect, long back I discussed about law of demand. When I happened to discuss about law of demand, what did I say? Keeping everything, ceteris paribus. Isn't it? That's what I said. Keeping everything constant. The quantity, and I have taken the price. And did you notice the fact when I happen to take the quantity on x-axis, I am referring this quantity of goods demanded and also quantity supplied. Am I right? Yes or no? Quantity of goods that is demanded and quantity of goods that are supplied is what I'm taking at x-axis. Following it, MJ? Okay. Any doubt? Do interrupt me. Feel comfortable. Okay. So, and don't worry about the time. Okay, I have enough time. We do have enough time. The reason is second paper is already done for you people. Okay, so you don't worry. We are already ahead of rest of people who started preparation of optional last month. So, wo to chinta mat kar. Okay, so do get the concept clear in the class itself. That's something of utmost important. So, though in the previous class I happened to write only Q, but Q stands for quantity demanded, quantity supplied in x-axis, and I'm taking the price on the y-axis. But as such, like my savings gets influenced by n number of variables, even demand gets influenced by n number of variables, isn't it? But I cannot express all the things in the same 2-dimensional graph, isn't it? So what did I happen to do? I happen to define ceteris paribus. Does mean keeping everything constant. Keeping everything constant except price. Except price. I'm just trying to convey how my demand varies with change in a price. With change in a price, isn't it? So what did we say? When the price is low, the demand would be high. When the price is high, the demand would be low. So on x-axis, I'm simply, this is a demand curve. That means at every point, at every price, what is the quantity demanded is what I'm just simply trying to explain on a x-axis. Am I right? And at the same time, at every given price, okay, people are willing to supply more price, more is the supply people are willing to, producers are willing to, isn't it? And the same thing now for this curve, okay, an x-axis, what does the value corresponds to? Quantity supplied. For this curve, what does the value correspond to an x-axis? Quantity demanded. Quantity demanded, quantity supplied, isn't it? For a given price. Keeping everything else constant. Keeping everything else constant. Isn't it? So when the price changes, the demand and supply moves along the respective curves. Isn't it? Agar if the price, okay, agar if the income changes, then we have seen the shift, okay, there will be a shift in the curves. That's what we discussed, right? Isn't it? So when I'm just trying to draw a graph, do understand the logic behind how I'm drawing a graph. Got it? Yes. And when I say demand is a function of so and so, can I write the same graph as a demand as of now is a function of price, keeping all other things constant, right? Isn't it? So when I say demand for a good rises or falls with change in price, it's by a mere intuition. Everyone could say, isn't it? And the same thing is what you're presenting in the form of graph. Isn't it? And the same thing you could also express as a mathematical equation, as a function. Demand is a function of a price. Isn't it? And or else I could write it as a, okay, let's say I could write this a demand function. Let's say quantity goods services demanded is, let's say 50 multiplied by 20p. I could write this as an equation. Can I write this? Okay, let's say this is how I have write it. I could write a demand function. I could write a demand function. Okay, Q equal to 50 minus some 20p. What does it mean? So now simply express this on a graph. Just simply, okay, open your notebook and just simply express this as a form of a graph. Yes, okay, just try to put it on a piece of paper. How would you draw a graph for this equation? That's it. Okay, you do it. Okay, so simply take numbers. 50 minus 20p, isn't it? So just simply draw a graph corresponding to this. I'm erasing this. Okay. Yeah, Q equal to 50 minus 20p. Does mean quantity demanded is more or less a function of a price, right? Yes or no? Yes. So now let me take the price on y-axis and Q on x-axis. Q on x-axis. When P equals to 0, let's say we start with origin and then let's say 0, okay, 5, 10, or let's, okay, 5, 10, 20, 30. So if I keep on doing it, so draw a graph that simply, okay, speaks about this. Yeah, when P equal to 0, what's the quantity of goods, okay, demanded? At P equals 0, quantity demand is 50, right? So when P equal to 0, Q demanded, okay, is 50. Isn't it? Yeah, when P equal to 1, when price equals to 1, what's the quantity demanded? 30. Quantity demanded 30. When price equal to 2, okay, 2 rupee, in such case, what's the quantity demanded? 10. Isn't it? Quantity demanded is 10. Isn't it? So that's how you could see with a rise in price. With a rise in price, quantity demanded keeps on reducing. Am I right? Yes or no? Clear? And you cannot demand a negative quantity, right? Can you demand a negative quantity? No, isn't it? So ideally, okay, so the price at which it becomes 0, isn't it? So how would you define it? 50 divided by 2 is 2.5. At 2.5 it becomes, isn't it? That's how you draw the demand. So the maximum. Got it? So the same thing what I have drawn in the form of a graph is what I express in a mathematical equation. And the same mathematical equation could also express in the form of graph. And both the things could also be expressed in simple English language, right? Yes or no? Isn't it? Any confusion? Yes. How you got it? Okay, so that's simple. I said quantity. I'm just simply, okay, how did I get this equation? I am just simply randomly I have come with a random equation. Let's imagine, let's say yourself. Okay, you eat pizza. You like pizza very much. Just imagine. The quantity of pizza that you consume, I'm expressing as a function of price. Am I right? Is that a function of price? If one pizza costs you $1,000, how many pizzas would you like to have per day? Literally 0 or 2. Even at 2, okay, TK, even at 2, okay, 1,000 rupees. If you, isn't it? So how many pizzas would you like to consume in a day? Do you think it's a function of price? Yes or no? Of course, it's also a function of your income, your tastes and preferences also. But let's suppose all the things constant. And I'm randomly assuming a demand function. Let's say that demand function is a function of, okay, demand of pizzas for yourself. And I'm saying that's equal to 50 minus 20p. I'm just randomly coming with some equation. Okay, so what does this equation convey is when the price of a pizza is 0, okay, when the price of pizza is 0, how much, okay, substitute the value of p0. So how many is the quantity of pizzas you would like to consume? 50. That means even though pizza is cheaper, you don't like to consume not more than 50. The reason because consuming beyond 50 maybe results in a negative satisfaction, isn't it? Maybe indigestion. That's the reason the maximum number of pizzas you'd like to consume when the pizza is offered free of cost to you is a max of 50. Got it? Isn't it? And the same pizza now, if it costs you 1 rupee, it does mean 50 minus 20p. Now the number of pizzas you would like to consume is going to come down to 30 because it's costing you more, isn't it? Now if the price of pizza goes to, okay, if it is 2 rupee, the number of pizzas you would like to consume is 10, isn't it? If it is 2.5, 20 multiplied by 2.5, it's going to be 0, right? Isn't it? Am I right? So when it is 2.5 rupees per pizza, then you don't like to, because you think 2.5 rupees for a pizza is too much to pay. Of course, okay, isn't it? Got it? So that's mean the same thing, the common logic that I could simply speak in the class, I could express in the form of a mathematical equation. I could express the same in the form of a graph. And we could say the same thing in a simple language. That's it. Okay. But one thing I'm just simply letting you know is we rarely use this mathematical notations. We rarely use math. Not required. We rarely use it. Again, if we use it, we don't use equations, not more than this kind. That's it. So we don't use any complex differential equations, first order, second order differential, nothing. If we use such simple equation. That's it. Okay, so what's your background, MJ? Commerce. Okay, so at least if I write an equation y equal to mx plus c, did every one of you happen to come across this kind of equation? Y equal to mx plus c. Is it a linear or non-linear equation? Huh? Linear or non-linear? And at least you have come across y equal to mx plus c. Mx plus c. I mean, just simply coming with, never have come across y equal to mx plus c. Okay. TK. Or let's say if I write y equal to f of x, that's mean function of x. What does it mean? Y is a function of x. Like demand is a function of price. Iska matlab kya hai? So y equal to f of x, or what I'm simply demand is a function of price. It's something like rather than x, I have written p, rather than y, I have written d. Quantity demanded is equal to function of price. The same thing is what I'm writing, generalizing as y equal to f of x, isn't it? Iska matlab, just now we concluded change in price influences change in demand, isn't it? So when I write y equal to f of x, what I'm saying is that x is generally said to be an independent variable. Independent variable. In fact, it is the x that influences the y, and y is dependent upon the value of x. Am I right? The quantity of pizzas you consume depend upon the price of pizza, right? Isn't it? So we would call this as a dependent variable, and we call x as a independent variable. Isn't it? See, if the value of y rises when x rises, both are said to move in one direction. Isn't it? So in such case, the curve would be of this nature. And if they move in opposite directions, that happens to be in the direction. That's it. Any doubt? Clear? Okay, so do you at least got it? Y equal to f of x ka matlab hai, isn't it? So when x changes, y is changing. When price changes, quantity changing. When your income changes, your consumption changes. When interest rate changes, money people borrow changes. Am I right? Money people save changes. That's mean interest rate is the variable that is deciding the money you invest. Interest is the variable that is deciding the money you save. Income is the variable that decides your consumption. Got it? So one seems to be independent, the other is dependent upon what you earn, what you spend. Got it? Isn't it? So that's what I mean to say. Everything that we happen to discuss or we understand in simple English language could be expressed in terms of graphs, could also be expressed in terms of mathematical equations, but we rarely use maths. We only use graphs. That's it. Okay. And you should be thorough with drawing those graphs. And any point of time, if you ever happen to have a confusion, do let me know. And once you start understanding, and that's the reason for the first few classes, I would ensure that everyone would be mastering the art of drawing graphs. So anything I express in words, you should be able to present in the form of a graph. If you could do it, 50% of our job is done. That's it. Iske alawa, there is no complexity in understanding. Clear? Got it? Yes. So what am I going to do is, like your general studies class, I have spent a decent time in simply explaining the fundamentals and brief introduction of the entire economics. For first few weeks doesn't mean that maybe 1.5 week. That's it. First few classes, rather than few weeks, first few classes, we'll try to understand some basics which we would apply for the next coming classes. So every topic that I'm going to explain is using these so-called concepts itself. Got it? Yes. So just simply note down, okay, the heading as a principles of economics. So the first topic I would take as, I would call it the principles of economics. So that's what I would call as my first topic, or lesson 0 is principles of economics. So I'll just give you 10 brief principles of economics, and every time I explain a principle, I'll also let you understand how they are applied. Okay. And how do they, later, whenever I discuss any topic, I'll just try to correlate my discussion with these principles. So I'll just give you some 10 commandments, and the entire economic syllabus would not move out of these 10 commandments. That's it. Everything is in service of these 10 principles, or every topic would be explained or could be understood using these 10 principles. Got it? Yes. And these 10 principles would help you to understand 3 basic things. So I'll divide these 10 principles broadly into 3 different categories. The first 4, okay, out of 10, 4 and the next 3 and the next 3. The first 4 principles would help us understand how people make decisions. The first 4 would help in understanding how people make decisions. So what's the science behind making decisions? What's the logic behind making decisions is what we'll try to understand. Okay. And the first 4 principles would let you understand, figure out how people make decisions. Got it? Yes. And what are those principles that let you understand how people make decisions? I will let you know. But the first 4 principles help you to understand how people make decisions. The second 3 principles help in understanding why and how people interact with each other. Why do people interact with each other, and how do people interact with each other? How people interact with each other. The second thing, okay, so how individuals make decisions. That's the first thing we'll try to understand. And how do these individuals interact with each other? That's the second thing we'll try to understand. Got it? So like our interaction, what's the rationality behind, what's the logic behind our interaction? What purpose it serves, and why are we interacting, and how are we interacting? Okay, so that's the second thing we'll try to understand. So individuals, how do make decisions, and how do people interact with each other, and why do people interact with each other? And the third thing that we'll try to understand is, by putting all these things together, the third thing that explains, okay, we'll try to figure it out, is how the economy as a whole works. Okay, once you understand how individuals, okay, take decisions, how people communicate and interact with each other, isn't it? Then we'll try to figure out how the economy as a whole works. Because my decision making and my interaction with others, all the things put together would help in understanding how the economy as a whole works. So the third set of principles helps in understanding how the economy as a whole, works. The economy as a whole works. So how the overall economy works. So at the end of the day, The 10 principles basically helps in understanding these three basic aspects. How people make decisions, why and how people interact with each other. Why do people interact with each other and how do people interact with each other? And the third most important thing is, okay, how the economy as a whole works. Got it? Okay, yes. So let's start with the first and foremost principle of economics. And that explains how people make decisions. How people make decisions. So how did you make a decision to choose economics as an optional? Okay, so why and what basis you have to choose today a green color dress? Okay, okay, so isn't it? So that's it. So every decision that you have. So let's say you just go for a shopping, let's say fruit market. You just simply take some 500 bucks and just go for a fruit market. And do you end up simply spending all 500 rupees on only your favorite fruit? No, isn't it? So you take 500 bucks and by the time you come back from the fruit market, you could see that the basket consists of different varieties of fruits. Different varieties of fruits, isn't it? So some of the fruits would be your favorite, isn't it? But just because it's your favorite fruit, you don't spend all the money on it, isn't it? Am I right? So you could find a combination and a diversity in the basket of fruits you purchase. And it would consist of the very commonly available and cheaply available fruit like a banana and an exotic variety, something like a avocado, isn't it? A kiwi or a passion fruit, isn't it? Or a mangosteen. You know the mangosteen, right? Isn't it? So it doesn't consist of only the exotic variety. It doesn't only consist because bananas are cheaper. Do you spend all 500 rupees on only the cheaper bananas? No, just because we conclude the fact when the price is less, people consume more. People consume more. Obviously, you prefer buying more bananas than compared to the number of mangosteen, the number of avocados you buy. Am I right? Yes or no? When you go to fruit market, do you buy the same quantity of bananas and same number of avocado? No, isn't it? Whatever is relatively cheaper, you end up buying it more. Then why don't you buy the cheapest? Or why don't you buy the favorite fruit? Why do you diversify? Yes? Huh? So my question is, so the cheapest, why don't you buy the cheapest? Okay, why don't you spend all of your money in the on those fruits which are the cheapest? Or why don't you spend all the money on that particular fruit that's seems to be your most favorite? Somebody starts with taste and preference, utility of the consumer. Okay. Taste, preference, and utility of consumer. Mira, okay, so you have given me three different terms. Okay. So why? And I think you don't need, not necessarily you need to type it. Okay. You could turn on your mic and you could freely interact. Is that okay, Mansi? Yes. So why?
So spending all the money on the cheaper fruit doesn't necessarily mean that we will gain maximum satisfaction from
maximum satisfaction. So iska matlab hai, so the cheaper bananas, okay, is 500 spent upon cheaper bananas. Because it's cheaper, you buy it more because it gives you relative better satisfaction because you're getting more for a lesser price. But you don't end up spending all the money on bananas because every extra banana purchased would not give you the same amount of satisfaction, isn't it? You remember it, right? And I happen to coin a term for it, margin, extra. Margin simply does mean extra. So the extra satisfaction that you derive for every extra banana you buy or you consume doesn't remain the same, right? Yes or no? The first 2 bananas or the first 10 bananas in the basket gives you more satisfaction because for 30 rupees you got 10 bananas. But you don't want to convert all 500 rupees into bananas. The reason is every extra satisfaction banana you consume or you would like to buy doesn't give the same satisfaction. Isn't it? So henceforth you limit the consumption of your bananas, isn't it? Yeah. So Raj already happens to coin a term for it. So it doesn't mean margin, simply doesn't mean extra. Isn't it? And rather than using the term satisfaction, okay, or happiness, just simply try to make it more formal, and I would be using the term called utility. Okay, utility, or what we call utils. Later I will be referring as a utils or simply utility. So how would you define a term called utility? And there are n number of ways people have defined utility. Simply does mean your personal satisfaction you derive. Can you measure utility? Huh? Can you measure utility? Can it be quantified? No, you cannot measure. Okay, I happen to derive 100 UK utilities or 100 utilities, isn't it? You cannot quantify. It's always subjective. Okay, it's always subjective, isn't it? So that's the reason. If I ask you, is utility cardinal or ordinal? Cardinal or ordinal? So cardinal does mean something that could be expressed in numerical terms, numerical values. Okay, so I have 100 rupees. Okay, so I could express my income in terms of rupees, isn't it? So cardinal does mean anything that could be measured in terms of numbers. But ordinal, you cannot express in numbers. You could only compare. Okay, let's say MJ, that satisfaction you derive having a pizza is not same satisfaction I derive it. Am I right? You're quite young. You could simply have anything, isn't it? I'm already, isn't it, 35. I should be careful with what I eat and what I choose to eat, isn't it? This is my fourth class for the day. If I eat pizzas, burgers, isn't it? I would not be able to. 8 o'clock, my batting started, isn't it? It goes up to, isn't it? So I should be choosy in what I eat, and I don't derive the same satisfaction. I used to derive more satisfaction having a pizza when I'm in 20s, isn't it? But I don't really think I should do the same thing now. So utility in this case is ordinal in nature. It's something like a relative or subjective. I could compare. My utility consuming pizza is more than compared to the utility that someone else might derive. I could compare, but I could not simply express in terms of numbers. Got it? Following? Yes. So I hope you understand the difference between cardinal and ordinal. Cardinal measure, ordinal measure. Okay. So the income, is it cardinal or ordinal? Wealth. Wealth. Huh? Yes. Happiness. That's it. Okay. So now it's clear, right? Any doubts, friends? Preeti? Yeah, very good. So I would not henceforth use this so-called satisfaction and simply happiness. We would use a term called utility. Okay, for all these things. Common term, utility. The utility I derive, iska matlab, I'm simply referring to the satisfaction you derive by consuming pizza. The satisfaction you derive by simply having a Coke. And I would call this as a utility. Got it? Yes, Samriddhi? Yes.
So isn't worth of a good a measure to quantify utility?
I didn't get you.
So isn't worth of a good a measure to quantify utility?
Worth of a good.
Worth, yeah.
Worth. Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Worth of a good cannot be, because that's what. Okay, we'll discuss. Okay, when we discuss about Marshall and Cardinal analysis. Okay. So there are some people who say you could measure the utility by simply looking at the amount of money you're foregoing for it. The amount of money you're foregoing for it. Okay.
Yes.
So that's one way, isn't it? So let's say if I'm willing to pay 10 rupees for it. Okay. Isn't it? So why am I willing to buy this bottle for 10 rupees? Because I assume it is 10 rupees worth the foregoing in return for the bottle. Does mean I am simply happy foregoing 10 rupees, and foregoing 10 rupees results in dissatisfaction. And in return, I am receiving a bottle, and that gives me satisfaction. Am I right? So if I say the utility that I derive by buying this water bottle is equal to almost the amount of money I'm losing for it. Am I right? Yes or no? And that's what Samriddhi is asking. Okay, so can I call or measure utility by simply looking at the amount of money you're foregoing for it? And henceforth, why can't it be cardinal? Isn't it? So that's the question Samriddhi is asking. Is that right, Samriddhi?
Yes, sir.
Isn't for the rest of the people? That's what I'm just trying to convey. Is everything clear, friends? But isn't it what is subjective from utility? But yeah, Ajay, I'm coming to it. You don't worry, isn't it? So what's the question she asked me is, I say utility is subjective. Isn't it? So what she means to say is, if you are willing to forego 10 rupees for a bottle of water, the reason why I'm consuming a bottle of water, because I derive satisfaction by consuming it. And to have a satisfaction of consuming one water bottle, how much money I'm foregoing? 10 rupees. So can I say the satisfaction of mine I am deriving is worth 10 rupees? Yes or no? That seems to be quite logical, right? Isn't it? But it has some inherent problem, which I will discuss later. But to make things clear now, okay, in this case, the spending of 10 rupees or the dissatisfaction you happen to have by foregoing 10 rupees is not going to be uniform for all people and in all instances. Got it? Can a beggar afford to buy a bottled water at 10 rupees? Huh? No. Why? It is a necessity, but can a beggar afford to buy a bottled water for 10 rupees? Say yes or no. Minu? No. Isn't it? But for Mr. Mukesh Ambani, does that matter foregoing 100 rupees? Like you might have come across this Virat Kohli. He said to consume what is called a black water, isn't it? So, and you know, it costs you a good amount of money, isn't it? Can you and me consume the same amount of, same kind of water? Huh?
No, sir.
No. Isn't it? Why? Why can't we? Because we are not as rich as a
Yes.
Virat Kohli. That's it. Following? So that's a very basic reason. That amount of money you forego, you spend is also based upon your affordability and your spending capacity. That's a basic reason. Okay. Let's say 1,000 rupees earned by a beggar in a day gives him immense satisfaction. Isn't it? But the first 1,000 rupees that is earned by Mukesh Ambani doesn't give the same satisfaction, not a fraction of it. Am I right? Yes or no? So that 1,000 I earn, I forego based upon what I incur, what I earn and what I could spend. Am I right? Henceforth, again, Samriddhi, the money you happen to make or you lose, okay, the satisfaction you make or derive or dissatisfaction you happen to make by spending or earning is again gonna be relative, subjective. Am I right? That's it. It is on those grounds, it cannot be again cardinal in nature. Okay. So anyway, we'll also discuss it. When we discuss about consumer theory, I'll tell you, okay, what's the good and what's the bad of it. Is that clear now? Yes. So, but one thing is that whenever I use a term called utility, don't ever get confused. I'm just referring to the satisfaction one derives, the individual satisfaction one derives by consuming something. That's it. Utility. Dissatisfaction sometimes we call it disutility. That's it. But we use a term called utility. Negative, positive. That's utility. That's it. Any doubt? Okay. So henceforth, I could freely use the term called utility. Okay? Yeah. So now let me give you the first principle of economics. Like I said, how people make decisions, and we'll try to understand in the first two classes, how do people make decisions, and using this, we'll try to understand lot many economic concepts, and I'll just give a brief introduction to certain things too. Okay? And again, if you want me to go slow, I'll go relatively slow, but do please make a note. Okay, keep writing so that it would be helping you to remember, because writing the same thing what has been discussed would help you to retain for a longer span of time. Okay? Yeah. The first principle of economics is, like you all remember, in my GS class, I happen to say people face trade-offs. People face trade-offs. What do you mean by it? People face trade-offs? What do you mean by people facing trade-off? Yes. People face a trade-off. Simply it does mean if you want something, something, you need to forego something in return for it. If you want something, you need to forego something in return for it. Isn't it? Okay. You accept it. Because that $100 you spend on pizza is the same 100 you cannot spend it on burger. Like I've been keep on joking, isn't it? Marriage and freedom. Mutually exclusive. Isn't it? You can't have both. Either you should be getting married and forego your freedom, and that's the cost you're paying for it. Isn't it? Or you could be free like Mr. Modi, isn't it? Because he keeps on claiming, I never happen to take a leave. And I work 24/7, 365 days. He could do it, but I am not the same thing who could, isn't it? I need to report to my authorities. Am I right? At the end of the day, what I do, I cannot simply do the same thing. Isn't it? So that's it. If you want something, you need to forego something in return for it. That's quite true. And isn't it? Am I right? Yes or no? So no matter whatever is the situation is, varying needs leading to varying utility. Oh, okay. Yeah, Mansi. So what I mean to say is, whether it comes to the decision that you make with respect to your personal life, or with respect to the money you spend, with respect to how you're going to spend the time, isn't it? So let's say this 3:30 to 5:30 and Friday afternoon, the time you're spending with me is the same time you cannot spend watching Oppenheimer. Am I right? Isn't it? Because maybe you could spend tomorrow same time, but today the time you are spending with me is the same time you cannot simply spend watching Oppenheimer, right? That's it. And that money you spend watching Oppenheimer is the same money you cannot spend watching Adipurush. Isn't it? Of course, there's no point in foregoing option to bias. That's what I mean. Isn't it? So the thing that you have Okay, isn't it? Is the same thing. You cannot afford to do the same for the same time cannot be utilized for two different things, isn't it? And simply the time that's this 20, okay, maybe you are in, okay, let's say 20 to 23. The time this age group that you are allocating for preparing services, I don't really think is the same time you could also simply spend it for simply running a business, right? Yes or no? That's what I mean to say. So people face trade-offs. No matter whatever is the professions, no matter whatever is the situation is, no matter whatever is the profession. Let's say you're farmer and you have a given piece of land, 5 acres of land. You choose to cultivate paddy. Idka matlab hai, you cannot afford to cultivate a sugarcane at the same time, simultaneously, the same parcel of land, right? That's it. So either you could choose paddy or you could choose a sugarcane, isn't it? That's it. You could go for an organic cultivation or inorganic cultivation. You cannot go for simultaneous because they're mutually exclusive. If it is inorganic, it cannot be organic. If it is organic, it cannot be inorganic. Isn't it? Same thing, like the finance minister, the money she allocates for agriculture is the same money she cannot allocate for defense. And the money she allocates for defense is the same money she cannot allocate for infrastructure. Am I right? That's it. So that's what I mean. So people face trade-offs. Isn't it? Okay. So let's try to look at how these things could be applied. Like if you could recollect long back, I was saying, if a nation has certain amount of resources, a certain amount of resources, and to make things simple, I'm assuming the resources of this nation right now is at any given point of time is constant. Okay. So, and let me, before going ahead, let me also make it one thing clear. Is mutual exclusivity a necessary condition for? Okay, is mutual exclusivity is a necessary condition for trade-off? Okay, that's the question is, okay, Ajay is asking. Okay. So again, Ajay, I'm not simply saying it's 100%. Okay, so I'm just trying to give a simple, okay, example for it. Okay, it's not necessary. Okay, they should be mutually exclusive. But thing is that, see, there might be people who could put an argument that, okay, it's not impossible, but in reality, that doesn't make sense doing the same thing simultaneously. Like, see, you could keep watching Oppenheimer and you could also at the same time keep watching it. Okay, yeah, what are the movie in simply in your mobile phone? Doing things simultaneously, isn't it? But ideally, that minute at that time or that money you spend is not available for something else. You see what that's what I'm saying. Okay, I happen to bring in the term called mutual exclusive just simply to convey the the aspect of marriage and freedom. That's it. But I don't really mean to say that no, I mean every independent man is an unmarried fellow, isn't it? And every married man happens to lose his independence. Okay, yes. But I'm not saying that, yeah, otherwise there wouldn't be any trade-off. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What I mean to say, rather than simply, we would not use mutually exclusive as of now. That's not the right term to use. That's my intention.
No, sir. Actually, I'm talking about like mutual exclusivity should be a necessary and sufficient condition for the trade-off.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. As of now, since, okay, I would not bring it now. Rather, I would simply say, okay, see what just now, rather than simply saying, using a word mutual exclusive, I'm simply saying there should be trade-off. Doesn't mean if you want something, you need to forego something in return for it. So what I'm saying is the word mutually exclusive is not the right term to use in this context, but I will let you know later when we start the consumer theory and producer theory. Okay. But as of now, just take it into granted, okay, that if you want something, you need to forego something in return for it. Okay. So there is always a trade-off attached. No matter whatever is the profession, no matter whatever the situation, you end up making decisions. Why is it so? Why is it so? So why do people face trade-off? Yes. Why? What's the reason behind it? Why do people face trade-off? Like we're saying, the money you spend for pizza is not the money same available for a burger, isn't it? Am I right? The time you spend for something else is the same time you happen to, isn't it? Am I right? Isn't it? Because simple, we are living in the world of a scarcity. We are living in the world of a scarcity, isn't it? Am I right? If you all have Akshay Patra and you could control your own time, isn't it? Am I right? If you control the rotation revolution of what everything is under your control, we would not be worrying about it. We would not be reading and we would not be listening, isn't it? That's it. So we live in the world of scarcity. Hence, for the money I could spend for pizza is the money I cannot spend for Isn't it? Following? Is it clear now? Yes. So to make the same things, let me express in terms of a graph. Let's suppose there is a nation which has a certain limited resources. Okay. And until I happen to say so, we'll just simply assume the resources or the inputs required to produce goods and services is only land and capital. Only land, labor and capital. I'm sorry, labor and capital. Though long back when it comes to GS class, I said factors of production. The quintessential elements required to produce any goods and services is land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. But to make things simple, to understand the economics, generally we do have the practice. Later in the coming sessions, we'll discuss about various economic models. And what is a model? Generally, what do you mean by an economic model, or what is said to be a model? Yes. Economic model. What do you mean by model? Like mathematical model. What do you mean by model? Yes. Representation of economic reality. Yes, it's an abstract of a reality. It's simply an abstract form of a reality, because you cannot simply express or replicate the real world scenario, right? Isn't it? So what do? You try to simply recreate or simply create an abstract of it. We impose certain conditions to understand things, okay, better. That's it. So the thing is that given a certain amount of money to MJ, Mahalakshmi, how does she spend money? Isn't it? That's what I just want to try to understand. Or how does women of age group 15 to or 20 to 25 spend money? Let's imagine. Imagine I just want to go for a case study. The case study is how do women between the age group of 20 25 spend money? That's the thing I am just interested in figuring out. You understood? So the challenge before me is how do women between the age group of 15 to 25 do spend their money? So can I come with a exact explanation for, okay, that gives me the correct answer for how every woman in the country and every woman in the world of age group 15 to 25 spends the money? Can I come with an answer that simply gives me an explanation of how every woman of 15 to 25 would be, or 20 to 25 would be spending? No. Can I come with any model or any, okay, isn't it? No way. No way. Isn't it? Here are some 2-3 kids, okay, isn't it? 2 kids, and you have some online classes. Even these 5-10 kids itself would not have the similar pattern of consumption, right? Yes or no? Someone could be highly spendthrift. Highly spendthrift does mean you prefer spending more than compared to saving, isn't it? Like you believe Jindagi milegi na dobara. Jindagi na milegi dobara, isn't it? So no, okay, we only lead one life. Let me live to the full extent, isn't it? So that's how someone believe, let me save it for my next generation, isn't it? Someone is more conservative, someone is more liberal, someone is more spendthrift, isn't it? So that's how taste, preferences, the way you could, isn't it? So I cannot come with an exact answer that helps in explaining the spending pattern of every woman in the world between the age group of 20 to 25. Am I right, friends? Vedika? Am I right, Samriddhi? Isn't it? That's it. But still, I am interested in understanding. How do I get to know that? Yes. Average. I could simply get to know the average of spending, but what do you mean by average pattern of spending? So what do I do if I am, that's okay. So what I'm saying, if I'm interested in understanding this, or I'm just trying to get an answer for this, so I need to make some assumptions. I need to make some assumptions. So because only when I make some assumptions, I could just come with an abstract model that to a large extent explains the spending pattern of a woman between the age group of 20 to 25. Am I right? So what could be the assumptions I could make? So the first assumption I could make is, let's say the woman happens to be, okay, from middle class, isn't it? So that could be an assumption. Or the woman doesn't have the bad habits of taking any, okay, illegal things, isn't it? Let's say they don't simply go for drugs and all these things, because that's how I could limit, isn't it? So by making some assumptions, I just try to could create a real world replica, and that's where I could simply make an explanation of how these women who doesn't simply go for drugs, who doesn't simply consume liquor, and who happen to be from middle class background, and whose average income happens to be 15-20 lakhs, do happen to spend. That's how I could create a pattern. And that could give me a better explanation of how, on an average, a large number of Indian women of this age group, of this income earning capacity, do happen to spend money, right? Isn't it? So it has been, if I'm trying to understand things in economics, the very common practice, we try to create models. We try to create models, and a model is an abstract of the reality, a real world. That's it. And whenever you're simply trying to make a model or design a model, it's quite natural that you need to make some assumptions to make things simple. Because you're trying to bring in every element of women spending, isn't it? Okay, so there is everything, every dimension, then things becomes very complex. Am I right? Yes or no? Isn't it? So like, see, there is, okay, if I'm trying to understand the spending capacity of typical Indian woman, and there is something I have noticed. Women not only do spend money just because they need it, they also spend it just because their friend has it. Do you? Yes or no? Am I right, MJ? Sometimes you buy things that's not because you need it. You buy it just because your friend has it. Am I right? Yes or no? Yes, Preeti replied. Okay, yes, she's accepting. She's very honest. Isn't it? But that doesn't seem to be quite a valid reason to understand the spending capacity. Isn't it? That's something like an exception, right? Preeti, don't you really think that's quite an exception, right? That's not a common practice, normal practice, isn't it, yes, Preeti? So that is how not every dimension or not every logic you apply in spending cannot be considered. We try to simplify things to understand things. Is that clear now? So, when it comes to the entire economic models, we do make some abstract of the real world scenarios. We do always make assumptions. And since we are making assumptions, our model would not be 100% correct in explaining our problem. You accept it? So it has been every economic model that we discuss in the coming classes have three things. One is the assumptions. The second is the explanation of the model. And the third that follows is the criticism. So this is going to be a common pattern of your answer. So every time we discuss something, okay, like Caldor's model of distribution, what do we have? The model should start with the purpose. Okay, what's the model is trying to explain? That's brief. And what is the model trying to assume? Isn't it? And then explain the model, and it should follow with the criticism. That's it. So we'll discuss n number of models, and every model we have the same pattern. And your answer should also have the same pattern. What is the purpose of model? Assumptions of the model, explanations of the model, criticism of the model. That's where the answer is. Is that clear now? Because you're trying to replicate the real scenario under certain presumptions, assumptions, then you cannot really replicate the real scenario. It would always have a criticism. You accept it? Yes or no? Yes. And sometimes some of the model seems to be very silly to you people. The reason is because this is a subject that's been developed since ages. So in the modern days, you people are lucky you have a digital currency, Europe. We have a CBDC, central bank digital currency. We have a cryptocurrency. Isn't it? You could use it as a money. But when somewhere in 16th, 17th century, when the subject has been developed, there was no proper banking system. There was no proper central banking system. There was no digital cards or simply debit cards. There were no credit cards. It is under those conditions, people have to devise models with respect to explaining how much money the economy needs, how much money an individual demands. And henceforth, some models seems to be pretty much silly to you. But just imagine that you are trying to understand a perception of an economy somewhere in 18th century, somewhere in 19th century. So when you are trying to explain what Ricardo says, David Ricardo, what Adam Smith says, you should always put yourself that you are living in the century, 18th or 19th century, in which they happen to present it. Got it? If you are trying to simply look at the things from 21st century and just trying to look at the past, then things seems to be crazy and silly for you, isn't it? Following, you could only appreciate when you also have to present yourself in those situations in those years, and that's how. Okay, so when we are discussing about Marshallian economics or David Ricardo, that's the name of economists. That's it. So you should live it in those years, those time. That's it. Okay, this seems to be silly, but it's still worth, because that's how the overall subject has been developed. Okay, any questions? Yes. So now coming to the question, okay, coming to the aspect of discussing, I said, okay, people face a trade-off. So let me take here in this case. You remember long back, I have given an example in my general studies class. If I take x-axis grains and then y-axis guns. Guns and grains. or guns and butter, bread and butter, anything. Just take two goods. And again, I am seeing this case, again, I am simply coming with a simple model. And what was the model I'm assuming? Here is an economy. The first is an economy which has limited resources at its disposal. The first resource, okay, limited resources. That's the first assumption I'm making. Limited resources. What are the resources? Let's say those minimum resources is land and capital. Iske alawa kuch bhi nahi hai. That's the limited resources. And that's quite true, right? Every nation has a certain amount of resources and they're limited. They don't have a absolute, okay, isn't it? I mean, whatever they need is they're limited resources. The second assumption I'm making in this case is this economy could only produce only two types of goods. Okay. The only economy could only produce only two types of goods. I mean, the resources could put to use only for producing two types of goods. One is only two types of goods, two goods, either guns or grains. I mean, some people are good at producing guns, some people are good at cultivating grains. That's it. Iske alawa, in no way you could put your resources to use and you could not produce anything other than. That's the second assumption I'm making. And that itself, okay, the reason why I'm assuming this is to explain the concept. But that itself is a very silly assumption, right? Where a nation could only produce two things itself is something worthy laughing at it. Am I right? But to make things simple, we just make an assumption. They could only produce only two goods, either guns or grains. I mean, the labor in this country are either good at producing guns and some of them good at cultivating grains, isn't it? So not necessarily all of them could do both the things. Some are good at producing guns, some are good at producing grains. But it doesn't mean that the one who is employed, okay, who could produce grains cannot be employed to produce guns, but he is not as efficient as he could in producing guns. Am I right? Am I right? Yes or no? So an expert like you might produce a gun, 10 guns in a day. A farmer could also produce it. Maybe it might take 10 years for the same gentleman to produce one gun. Am I right? That's what. So one is skilled enough to, few are skilled enough to cultivate grains and few people are skilled enough to produce guns. And that's the composition of the labor. Got it? You got it now? Yes. So now since the resources are limited, can I produce infinite quantity of guns and infinite amount of grains? No. Because the resources limited, I cannot produce infinite quantity of guns and infinite quantity of grains, isn't it? So there is always a maximum limit to which there is always a maximum amount of guns and maximum amount of grains I could produce. Am I right? Yes or no? Isn't it? So let's say this is the maximum guns and this is the maximum grains. See, if I choose this, it's the maximum grains and zero guns. If I choose this, okay, zero grains and maximum guns. Isn't it? So there are two extremes. There happen to be two extremes. Either I could simply produce or employ all the resources to produce guns or all the resources to produce grains. That's it. That's two extremes. But is it the only two possible combinations? Is there only two possible combinations? Zero guns and 100, okay, some 100 quintal of grains or 100 guns and 0 quintal of grains is the only possible combinations? No, isn't it? So there could be multiple combinations. Am I right? Of different quantity of goods, I mean guns and different quantity of grains. There could be multiple combinations, right? Am I right? Yes or no? And let that be combinations of these points. So simply if I, okay, let's say this is the max. So if I combine all these points, and in fact, this curve is a locus of all the points. Locus simply does mean a collection of all the points. I mean, the possible quantity of guns and grains I could produce. Am I right? Isn't it? So this line is a locus or simply collection of all the possible production values. Am I right? Yes or no? So it has been, this is the possible, this is possible, this is possible, this is possible. Am I right? Is that clear now? Any doubt? Yes. And this is something what we have discussed maybe in general studies, right? Yeah. And I would call this. Now let me name this curve. And can someone simply name the curve? Yes, I would call this as a production possibility frontier. Production possibility frontier. In commerce, you might have done this, right? And no, what I'm simply saying this particular, so this is what I call production possibility frontier. Production possibility frontier. I mean, the maximum quantity of combination of outputs that I could produce with a given set of resources is what this line gives you. What this line gives you. Am I right? So in fact, if you could recollect potential GDP, it does mean the maximum output that you could produce by fully employing your labor and resources at a sustainable rates and stable inflation rates. Am I right? Isn't it more or less the same thing? So with a given set of resources, the maximum possible combinations of goods I could produce is any points on this particular curve, and I could call as a production possibility frontier. So the maximum possibility is given on this curve. Am I right? Following? And what's your name? Huh? Pritika. Okay. So that's the production possibility frontier. Yes. Got it? So now tell me, MJ, if I choose this point, is this point possible? Yes, Mira? Is this point possible? Say, sir, no. Be confident with what you say. You could go wrong, isn't it? And I would not criticize. Okay.
Yes,
Is
sir.
this point possible?
Yes, sir.
Is this point possible?
Yes, sir.
Is this point possible? Yes.
Yes.
So any point between this, okay, is possible, right? But is this point possible?
No.
Huh?
No,
Is
sir.
this possible? And is this possible? No, anything, because frontier simply does mean the, okay, you know, frontier does mean the limit or simply the boundary. Am I right? Something like the boundary is the maximum extent to which you could stretch. Isn't it? So given the resources are limited, the maximum is simply a combination of output, anything that's on this curve, beyond which you cannot produce because you are limited by resources, isn't it? So this is something impossible. And this is the best possible combinations. And anything produced less than this, iska matlab hai you are inefficient in allocating or utilizing your resources. Can I say so now? Isn't it? Anything below this particular curve does mean you are quite inefficient, because this is the maximum you could produce, but you happen to go for underemploying your resources, and henceforth you're producing quite less than what you're capable enough. Am I right? So this is what I call say inefficient production, and this is the efficient production levels, and this is something not possible to achieve. Is that clear now? Any doubts? Amir? Amir, any doubt? Siddharth?
No, sir.
Okay. So if you have any doubt, do let me know. Srishti? Okay. So now clear, right? Yes. Now, let me ask a simple question. Is this production possibility frontier, will it remain constant forever? Or does that, okay, is there a chance it could shift? Will that particular production possibility frontier for a nation, will that remain constant forever? You mean to say forever and ever and ever the nation could produce only these combinations of output? Or is there any chance of either improving or shifting of this curve to the right or to the left? Let's say if there is a Holocaust and 50% of population happen to die. In such case, what happens? Huh? What happens to the production possibility frontier? And imagine here in this case, we are only utilizing labor. We are utilizing only labor. Forget about other resources. The only resource that we are, okay, we have a disposal is labor. And if that labor happen to shrink because of Holocaust, okay, something like COVID happened, let's say, imagine, isn't it? If there is a loss or simply shortage of population, what might happen? Will that remain constant? No, it should contract, isn't it? Or imagine if there is increase in population, or this population or the labor himself happens to be acquiring a new skill, isn't it? Because today, imagine you came out of college and I employed you, isn't it? There's a number of balance sheets you could read in a month or you could read in a week as a commerce graduate, isn't it? In the early days of coming after college is limited, right? But once you start simply gaining experience, your productivity improves, isn't it? Am I right? Then your skill improves and henceforth your output and your productivity obviously rises. Am I right? Same thing, same is the case. So will that production possibility frontier remains constant? No, it might either shift to the left or shift to the right. You accept it? Okay, yes. And have you noticed one more thing, that this particular curve itself is trying to convey the fact if you want something, you need to forego the other. And what is it simply saying? That grains and guns. And if this is a production possibility frontier, okay, so if this is the point I choose, and I would like to increase the production of my grains. If I want to move from this point to this point, what is it trying to convey? There would be increase in production of my guns by this quantity, but at the same time, there is a fall in production of grains, guns by the same quantity. Okay, isn't it by a certain quantity? Am I right? Yes or no? So this point to this point, if I move it, does mean I am moving. Okay, so on y-axis, this is the y1 and the new value is y2. And the new, x1 and the new value is x2. So if you look at delta x, does mean change in x. That's it, x2 minus x1. You accept it? Following it? Okay. Yeah. Let's suppose this is the point. This is the, can I write this point as x1, y1? Because the value on the x-axis and the value on the y-axis. X coordinate, y coordinate. So today, imagine this is the quantity of grains and guns I'm producing and cultivating. Let's suppose tomorrow, if I choose this point x2 and y2. Okay, now tell me, Mahalakshmi, is x2 more than x1 or less than x1? X2 more than x1 or less than? Because when you are in the right side, moving in the right side from origin, is this value increases or decreases? X2? More. And y2, is that more than y1 or less than y1? Less than, isn't it? So look at it. What is the gain? That's what I'm measuring as delta. Change as delta x. Delta x has mean what's the current quantity? Isn't it? X2 minus x1. Isn't it? Since x2 is more than x1, so there is a positive change in grains. But at the same time, look at delta y, y2 minus y1. And since y2 less than y1, isn't it? So hence for delta y is a negative. So for every, for a certain amount of increase in grains, I happen to forego a certain amount of guns, isn't it? Okay, if both happens to be positive, chalta, isn't? But in this case, it's been clearly, it's been very clear that if you want to increase the production of guns, you need to forego certain amount of, guns. Am I right? Yes or no? So look at more guns production resulted in less, more grains resulted in lesser guns, isn't it? And that is what I have written in numbers or mathematical form is what I happen to begin with. People face trade-offs. So if you want more guns, you need to forego grains. If you want more grains, then you need to forego guns. Is that clear now? So that's how the production possibility frontier. Okay. So that means if you are an organization, a company, with a given set of resources at your disposal, you cannot produce infinite quantity of goods and services your company produces. Am I right? There is always a maximum limit to which you could produce goods and services. Isn't it? Do you accept it? Yes or no? You are running a company that manufactures these pencils. And these pencils require certain amount of inputs. Isn't it? And can you produce infinite quantity of these pencils? No. Isn't it? There is always a limit to which you could produce, and the maximum but the possible number you could produce is the maximum. Is that clear now? That's it. So for individuals, for an organizations, even for the nation, there is a limit to which you could produce, isn't it? And we will come back to this when we discuss about a production theory. We'll come back to this when we discuss about a production theory. And as of now, I'm just trying to move ahead. Clear? So is that clear now? What I mean to say, people face a trade-off. It simply conveys the fact if you want something, you need to forego something in return for it. And we'll come back. We'll keep on revisiting. And we'll discuss in detail when we discuss about a production theory. Clear? Yes. Now, let me use a similar concept, the same logic to explain one more thing. Let me take on x-axis, I'll take pizzas and I'll take burgers. Pizzas and burgers. Okay. So I'm just trying to, point out the combinations of burgers and pizzas that makes you equally happy. Equally happy. Got it? So what I mean to say, tell me, MJ, would you prefer, one pizza or one burger, or would you prefer two pizzas or two burgers? What point do you prefer? one burger, two pizza, two burger, three pizza, three burger. What would you prefer? Vedika, what would you prefer? Huh?
One
I mean, would you
pizza, one burger.
only one pizza, one burger, is it? Okay. So given an option, Vedika, what would you prefer? Would you like to prefer two or one or two in general? It's not only pizza or burger. It could be anything, isn't it? We always prefer more or less. We always prefer more over less because anything that gives you satisfaction, more satisfaction, we always prefer having it more until unless you would be negatively satisfied, isn't it? Dissatisfaction, okay, isn't it? We always like to consume more, isn't it? Am I right? Okay, so I hope you understand something called satiation, non-satiation, isn't it? We are human beings by nature driven by greed, isn't it? So, or incentives, and that's the reason we always prefer having more than compared to less. Do all of you accept it? So every time you've been given opportunity, you always prefer having more. 3 pizzas and 3 burgers is always preferable than compared to 1 pizza, 1 burger, 2 pizza, 2 burgers. Am I right? Yes or no? Yes. Clear? Yes. So this gives you, it tells you that you people prefer consuming more and more, or you people prefer having something more and more. Isn't it? But at the same time, there might be there might be different combinations which might give you a same satisfaction, isn't it? A different combination of pizzas and burgers would also give you a same satisfaction. Like I mean to say that Shubhankar is indifferent or equally happy for 3 pizzas and 3 burgers, isn't it? 3 pizzas and 3 burgers, 4 pizzas and 2 burgers, isn't it? So I'm simply saying his particular utility or satisfaction. So I mean to say there are some possible combinations for Shubhankar, okay, where he is equally happy with any combinations of these so-called basket of foods, right? He's equally happy consuming, or he derives the same satisfaction consuming 3 pizzas, 3 burgers. And he is also going to have the same happiness by consuming 4 pizzas and 2 burgers, or 4 burgers and 2 pizzas. Get what I'm saying? Maybe, isn't it? I'm not saying everyone is equally happy for the same combination, but it is not only the satisfaction that he derives by 3, is the same satisfaction he derives by consuming 4 pizzas, 2 burgers, or 2 pizza, 4 burgers. Am I right? I mean, there could be different combinations of this basket which gives you similar satisfaction, isn't it? Similar satisfaction. Get you what I'm saying? Following? Any doubt? Okay. So there could be different possible combinations which might give him a similar and same, constant satisfaction, isn't it? And I would simply, combine the locus of all those points which gives him the same satisfaction for a consumer, and I would call this curve as an indifference curve. And I will name this curve as an indifference curve. So what is that mean to indifference curve? Does mean this gentleman is indifferent in consuming any of these combinations. So that means he doesn't make any difference with respect to the consumption of any possible combinations on this curve. Clear? Is that clear now? Raj, following? So don't worry. Okay, all these things is what we'll revisit. But I'm just trying to make you people comfortable. Okay. And we'll just try to make relatively complex. Okay. In fact, this is what we'll discuss as part of consumer theory. The production possibility frontier as part of production theory. We'll just try to expand the scope. And this is what I'll just try to again explain as part of consumer theory. In fact, it is from this indifference curve. Later, I'll derive the demand curve. Of course, by mere intuition, we happen to conclude the fact, rise in price, fall in demand, fall in price, rise in demand. But we could derive it. And how come? By using the same indifference curve itself. And we'll do it when we do the consumer theory. But by simple logic, can you simply accept the fact there could be a possible combinations which might give you a same satisfaction? And I'm saying this could be the possible combinations for Mr. Shubhankar, which gives me a same satisfaction, same utility. I mean, utility of Shubhankar of any combinations on this curve remains a constant. Remains a constant. Okay. Is that clear now? Following? And this is what I'm calling the indifference curve. Indifference curve has been he's indifferent in consuming any possible combinations of goods on this curve. Is that clear now? Isn't it? So, and Shubhankar could have different, okay, so at a certain, okay, utility, this is indifference curve, isn't it? Similarly, he could also be, okay, so this is also the curve he would prefer, isn't it? And this is a different indifference curve for which his utility increases. His utility increases for all these combinations, isn't it? And for, okay, so, and that's how you could draw multiple indifference curves for this gentleman, isn't it? So along every curve, his satisfaction remains constant with the different possible combinations of those goods and services he consumes, isn't it? And as I already said, we always prefer more than compared to less. So Shubhankar would always like to stay on the indifference curve to the maximum extent possible, because that gives more satisfaction, right? Yes or no? So I'm drawing multiple indifference curves based upon your satisfaction levels, isn't it? So you call n number of indifference curves. Okay, and one prefers always attaining or simply, okay, isn't attaining the maximum utility, and that's a very basic reason. He always prefers staying on this indifference curve than compared to this. Do all of you accept it? Yes, Kashyap? Kaushik, sorry. Okay, I'm really sorry. Okay, so I have some seen the name and this. Okay, so we all happen to prefer having more always than compared to less. So given an opportunity, every one of us like to stay on the maximum indifference curve. On the maximum indifference curve that could be possibly attained. And what I'm saying, along this curve, any combinations would give him the satisfaction. And the satisfaction on this curve gives me more than compared to the combinations on this curve, than compared to this, and then compared to this, and then compared to this. You accept it now? Yes or no? Minu? Okay, the one online. Later. Okay, so is that clear now? Yes. Now tell me, if you always prefer this curve, isn't it? Then what limits you? Let's say take the case. Okay, MJ, if I ask you, would you prefer riding Rolls Royce? Chartered flight? Isn't it? So let's be, okay, let me give you a simple example. Okay, so let's imagine the satisfaction or simply the possible combinations. This is the, okay, you are indifferent with respect to consumption of certain services, something like traveling or simply riding metro. And yes. Yeah, so riding metro, and then, okay, isn't it a combinations of the metro rides and simply your scooter, isn't it? But you'd also be happy riding one of the best, isn't it? Let's say riding Rolls Royce and a chartered flight, isn't it? Yes or no? So these are the possible combinations of your rides on metro. Okay, isn't it? Rides on metro on your personal scooty, and this is the highest difference that you could attain, and this indifference gives you, okay, the satisfaction you derive by simply any possible combinations of the rides in Rolls Royce and simply flying in chartered flight. And given opportunity, everyone would like to attain or stay on the highest indifference curves. I would like to go to the high, okay, reach the highest indifference curve, right? Am I right, Vedika? Yes or no? What would you prefer? That gives you less satisfaction and less utility, or more satisfaction, more utility? Yes, Vedika? Which indifference curve? IC1 or ICN? What would you prefer?
ICN.
Yes, isn't it? So we always prefer more than compared to less. Am I right? Because the satisfaction on this curve is always more than compared to it, isn't it? And I hope you understand the satisfaction levels once you move from one curve to other curve increases, but again at the same time the satisfaction on an average along the curve remains the same. Exactly, along the curve satisfaction or utility remains the same, but one curve to other curve satisfaction keeps on increasing. So higher is indifference curve, higher is the satisfaction, isn't it? And people always want to reach the highest possible indifference curve, highest possible indifference curve, not highest existing indifference curve. Okay, why is it so? Like you always prefer riding Rolls Royce and flying chartered flight, isn't it? So, but why don't you? And what is limiting your ability to reach the highest indifference curve?
Budget.
Huh?
The
That's
budget.
it. Okay. So your ability to spend is limiting your Isn't it? So we always try to reach the highest indifference curve, but what is limiting your ability is your paisa, isn't it? So that means it is limiting you. I would use a term called constraint. It is constraining you to achieve or attain the maximum indifference curve, right? Yes or no? Budget constraint. Given an opportunity, even I would like to ride Rolls Royce, but what is limiting my opportunity to ride a Rolls Royce? Okay, paisa. Isn't it? And this is limiting me, and that's constraining me to attain a higher indifference curve. And issue was just I'm simply calling adding one more term, budget constraint. It is constraining me to reach this, isn't it? So there could be n possible indifference curves. Okay, so there could be n possible indifference curves. So this, and this, and this, isn't it? Let's say when it comes to pizzas and burgers. These are the different indifference curves, isn't it? But what's the maximum indifference curve that I could attain is limited by my budget constraint, isn't it? The money I could spend. Is that clear now? Yes or no? Mansi, following? Okay. And have you ever noticed even on this indifference curve, there is something, I could apply the same first principle. People face a trade-off. People face a trade-off. So where do you think you could explain or you could apply it? People face a trade-off. Let's say look at here in this case, this is the possible pizza and burger I choose. And if I move from this point to this point, though the satisfaction remains the same, but for every extra pizza I consume, there is some now certain burgers I has to forego. You accept it? Satisfaction might remain the same. For every extra pizza I consume, isn't it? I might end up simply foregoing some burgers. Am I right? Yes or no? You accept it? So now let me bring this together. The production possibility frontier. Okay. Which sets the basic background and the basis for understanding our production theory. And indifference curves more or less sets the basic things for our consumer theory. Okay, so look at this is an indifference curve, IC1, and that's the indifference curve, IC2. Okay, let's say this is pizza and then burger. And that's like a same thing. Okay, imagine the producers could produce pizzas or burgers. So this is the production side, and this is the consumption side or consumers. Okay, and I happen to say if these are the possible combinations of burgers and pizzas you could produce, and I call it a production possibility frontier. Any combination on this particular curve is the efficient production level, and anything less is inefficient, anything beyond is not practically possible. Got it? And if you look at for every extra pizza you need to produce from a given quantity, you need to forego a certain amount of burgers. Got it? And the number of burgers that you need to forego for every unit rise in the pizza is what we measure. You get what I'm saying? Okay. Change in the number of, so the burgers you need to forego for every rise in the pizzas you produce. Following is what is measured in the name of a marginal rate of, margin does mean extra, rate of that's for indifference curve. Marginal rate of transformation. Okay, we call this as a marginal rate of transformation. Transform does mean you could transform a pizza to burger. You're transformed. It does mean you have a given set of resources and you could only you could only produce only two types of goods. Isn't it? Every time you're trying to transform a pizza into a burger, it does mean you're losing some opportunity to produce an extra pizza. Am I right? Yes or no? So that isn't you're transforming does mean so you're losing burgers to produce pizzas, isn't it? So it does mean if you want to transform some particular burgers into pizzas, you need to forego something, isn't it? So the number of burgers you need to forego to increase the output of pizzas is what we happen to measure in the name of marginal rate of transformation. You're transforming X into Y or simply pizza into burger or burger into pizza. So how many pizzas you need to forego for a burger, or how many burgers you need to forego for a pizza? Because you are transforming one, okay, pizzas into burgers or burgers into pizzas. And we measure this change as marginal rate of a transformation. Marginal rate of a transformation. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So the thing is that I should start with it. Next particular principle itself is related to opportunity cost itself. Okay. But I'm just trying to slowly take you into the economic language. The language of economics. That's it. Okay. So that's it. Because we don't use this common layman terminology henceforth. Okay. The way we discuss in the general studies classes. Got it? So I happen to draw the similar curve, but I never mentioned it's a production possibility frontier. Maybe by mistake, I might have mentioned it, but in general studies, I don't use it. But now we would not be simply ending up with it. We now try to use this, the language. That's it. Every subject has a language, right? Yes or no? So if you ever happen to start interacting with those students already started preparing anthropology, they would be using a different kind of language, isn't it? Sociologists, their thought process might already been changed. Am I right? Same thing. We would be using, okay, certain terminology. Clear now? Yes. And we call this transformation. Okay, in fact, okay, do you want me to write it? Marginal. Marginal does mean, like I will say, margin simply is an extra rate of a transformation. So it does mean, in fact, you are trying to simply look at the slope. Am I right? The slope itself. Am I right? Yes or no? Change in Y by change in X gives you, or change, okay, fall in quantity pizza by, or burger by pizza, isn't gives you the, isn't it? So it does mean the number of pizzas you need to forego for an extra burger, or the number of burgers you need to forego for an extra pizza, isn't it? Because you are transforming, okay, burger into pizza or pizza into burger. But you cannot produce X and 100, okay, unlimited quantity of both the things because the resources are limited. Clear now? And that's what is measured as marginal rate of transformation. So in something like you are asking, is that an opportunity cost? Is that's it. And that's what would be our second principle of economics. Clear now? Ria? Vaibhav? You see what I just say? I just want to look at your faces. That's the reason when it comes to my optional class, I would always insist, do turn on your cameras. I do want it. No matter. Don't worry. Isn't it? So, yeah. So don't feel shy. There are around 20 people. Yes. Okay. So, but I still do want me. Okay, yeah. Can you name second principle again? I have not mentioned it. Second principle. Okay. Okay, just give me a second. We'll mention it, but let me introduce production possibility frontier. I happen to use it called marginal rate of transformation. The rate at which, okay, at the slope of this curve, the number of pizzas you need to forego for an extra, okay, burger, or the number of burgers you need to forego for an extra pizza is what we call as an opportunity cost, or rather we use a term called marginal rate of transformation. Okay. Yes. I mean, the extra pizza I need to forego for an extra burger, or the extra number of burgers I need to forego for an extra pizza. That's it. You see what I'm saying? You are using a called margin, extra. And now look at here in this case. I happen to say this gentleman is equal, okay, is equally happy for a different combinations of these particular pizzas and burgers. But at the same time, look at this gives you 2 pizzas, okay, 3 pizzas and 3 burgers. And this point gives you 4 pizzas and 2 burgers. And this gives you 2 pizza and 4 burgers. And maybe this gives you 1 pizza and 5 burgers. So there are different combinations possible. And he's all equally happy. And he's quite indifferent in consuming any of this basket because he derives the same satisfaction. Following, and that's the reason I am saying he's indifferent with respect to, okay, any possible combination. But at the same time, the same gentleman is also happy consuming 6 pizzas and 6 burgers and anything more. So he is trying, okay, he could also reach the, okay, other indifference curve. And on this, the satisfaction is more, but again, it remains constant. Got it? But at the same time, have you noticed the fact that every time he would like to increase the consumption of pizza, he's going to reduce the consumption of burgers, isn't it? So it has been every time you would like to consume more pizza, it has been you need to substitute your burgers with pizzas. Am I right? If you prefer consuming more of burgers, that means you're substituting your pizzas with burgers. If you're preferring consuming more of pizzas, that means you're substituting more of your burgers with pizzas. Am I right? Yes or no? So the number of pizzas you are foregoing to consume in return for an extra burger. In this data, what you call an opportunity cost is what in this case we call is a marginal rate of a substitution. So you need, okay, so the rate at which you substitute your pizza for a burger or a burger for a pizza. This is what we measure, or we call this as a marginal rate of a substitution. MRS, MRT. Marginal rate of transformation, marginal rate of a substitution. Margin has been extra. So the extra number of burgers you need to forego to consume, okay, for an extra pizza. Isn't it? Same thing you could look at in the other direction. Marginal rate of a substitution. Is that clear now? Any doubts? Yes, Sabri? Sabri, Priya. I hope I'm clear, right? Yes. So now in both the cases, I just simply clearly happen to show you either you being a producer or you being a consumer. There is a trade-off attached, right? Yes or no? Isn't it? You want to consume more of something, you need to forego consumption of something else. You want to produce more of something, you need to forego production of something else. And that's what I would like to say. And I happen to give you a terms that measures your opportunity cost, or simply what you're foregoing. One I call marginal rate of transformation, the other I call marginal rate of substitution. So now do you accept it? People face trade-offs? Yes? Yes. Very good. Okay. And the second principle of economics is, the second principle of economics to understand how people make decisions is the cost of something. The cost of something is what you give up. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. What you give up to get it. So like I said, for every extra pizza, you need to forego some burger. But how many burgers you need to forego for an extra pizza? Or how many pizzas you need to forego for an extra burger? Isn't it? Is what is measured by using, or what we call it as a opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, isn't it? And that's what this simply says. The cost of something is what you are giving up to get it, isn't it? And this, in simple parlance, people call it as a opportunity cost. And that's it. So whatever you're foregoing in return for something else is what is called opportunity cost. And you see, just I have defined something in Genesis class as the cost of next best alternative. Next best alternative. So what is the alternative? If you could only produce two goods, either grains or guns. Or what is the alternative if you could only consume two combinations of pizzas and burgers, either pizza or burger. Got it? Isn't it? So the cost of next best alternative, or the cost of something, is what you give up to get it. And we happen to call this as an opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. And how would you measure the opportunity cost? Okay. Of a producer who is having a problem of production, choosing a production of guns and grains by simply measuring the slope along the curve. By measuring the slope of the curves. Slope of indifference curves gives you the opportunity cost. And that gives you the marginal rate of a substitution. Isn't it? And the marginal rate of transformation gives you it's a slope along the PPF, production possibility frontier. That's it. So you could get to know at any point of time. Let's say take the case of the same production possibility frontier. Let's say the pizzas and burgers. And this is the possible frontier as of now with the given combination of labor and resources. Is the slope remains constant? Is the slope of the curve constant, Preeti? No. Is the slope constant? No. Isn't it? So at every point, okay, so the tangent gives you the slope, right? Am I right? Yes or no? So look at it. That remains different at different points. So now if you look at here in this case, the curve has relatively less slope, isn't it? So let's say for extra, here in this case, from this particular level point to this point, any further increase in gains would come with a very small amount of guts you forego. But when you look at this particular, point to this point, any further rise would result in a great fall in the sacrifice of a guns. So this is what I mean to say. It is if I'm trying to quantify the trade-off, I'm calling this as an opportunity cost. And what does it say? The cost of something is what you give up to get it. So now I hope you understand. Let's put both the principles together. People face trade-off would only tell you the fact that if you want something, you need to forego something. That tells you the fact of life. But opportunity cost is the one that helps you taking a decisions. How much is worth the foregoing in return for an extra banana, an extra avocado, an extra pizza, an extra burger. Got it? So the first principle says, the more is the pizzas you want, less is the burgers you would get. More is the burgers you get, less is the pizzas you get. Isn't it? But the second principle tells you how many pizzas you need to forego for a burger, or how many burgers you need to forego for a pizza. So the second thing is trying to quantify your cost. Is that clear now? So the first thing tells you the fact of life, but second thing would quantify your gain or a loss. Isn't it? So it does mean basically when you make decisions, we always happens to come with evaluating the pros and cons. Isn't it? The good and bad, the benefits, am I right? What you call cost and profits. Isn't it? Am I right? Isn't it? In fact, in financial balance, we use it to call risk and returns. What is the risk involved and what's the returns I'm making? Isn't it? What's the cost involved? What's the benefits I'm receiving? Isn't it? So how much I'm spending, how much I'm earning it? Isn't it? So the second thing would help in taking a judgment. Got it? First thing is a fact. Second thing helps you making a call. Okay, how much is worth the foregoing in return for something else? Is that clear now? Okay, and that's what the second principle is. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. And people simply call this as an opportunity cost. And simple terms, how do you define opportunity cost? The cost of a next best alternative. Clear? And this simply seems to be a very simple principle, but it could explain a lot many things that we happen to come across in life. A lot many things. Okay, like see, why is that everyone in your class has not opted to remain unemployed for the next couple of years to prepare civil services? Mansi, lot many friends of yours would like to become a civil servant, right? That why is it not everyone in your class has opted to prepare civil services by remaining unemployed for the next couple of years? Yes, Lahari, what do you think could be the reason? It's simply the opportunity cost. It's simply the opportunity cost. So you thought, that, okay, what's your next best alternative, Mansi? If you're not opted for preparing civil services, what would you have? What would you think? I mean, what do you think you would be doing? Yeah, working for a company, right? Yes or no? Maybe you might be working for a private organization, multinational company, isn't it? Do your masters. Okay, yeah, do a masters in IR. Okay, so very good, isn't it? So you have a plan B or you have a next best alternative, isn't it? But why did you postpone it? Why did you postpone it? Or why did you drop the idea? Because you thought the benefit of preparing civil service for the next 1 year is relatively more, or the satisfaction you derive, the utility you derive by simply preparing for civil services is more than compared to the dissatisfaction that you happen to make by not pursuing your post-graduation. Am I right? Yes or no? That's it. That explains the reason why don't you spend 100 rupees for a banana. Does it make sense spending 100 rupees for a banana? But you spend 100 rupees for an avocado, right? You spend 100 rupees for an avocado, but you don't spend 100 rupees for a banana. Why? The opportunity cost. Because the same 100 rupees, isn't it, could buy me some 10 banana milkshakes. Then why simply forego 100 rupees for one banana? Isn't it? Well, why do you spend one avocado? I mean, 100 bucks for one avocado? Because the thing is that, the same, I don't have any better alternative. Is that clear now? Opportunity cost. Got it? Yes. And let me give you a brief introduction. So I have already given you production theory, consumer theory, isn't it? Yes. So let me also take this and simply help you to explain the other important aspect. So I'll just give you a brief of or see through to international economics. Okay. So the concept of opportunity cost could also be used to explain how nations trade with each other and what nations export and what nations import, or what is the nation could be good at exporting and what should be the nation importing. Got it? So let me give you a simple theory, which again, don't worry, everything I'm discussing now is gonna be discussed in detail very thoroughly in the next coming classes. We are simply doing the warm-up. Okay, soon you enter a gym. Generally, what do many people do? The fundamental mistake, they happen to simply go for a lifting weights, and that's the reason these days you might have seen someone in gym collapse because of a cardiac arrest. Because you do any such kind of things directly, simply go for weights and do such things, isn't it? And your heartbeat increases and your heart cannot simply pump in more blood. There ends the matter. So it does mean no matter how professional you are, for how long time you've been changing, the first and foremost thing you happen to do is warm up. And that's what we are doing for the next few days. Okay. And once everything is clear and once everyone is in my frequency, then we'll just simply hit the hard part. Okay. So then you'll try to come up with the change in shape of your body and the way you look. Isn't it? So until then, you should have a patience. Is that clear now? Yes. So let me give you, okay, so I don't want to write the name of the theory. Let's say I'll just give you two different options. Okay, imagine there are two different nations. Country A and country B. Country A and country B. Two different nations with a different set of resources. And again, the assumption I'm making in this case is simple. These two nations could only produce two different types of output. Both produces similar output and a same, only two different types of output. Let's say, country A and both produces cars and computers. The only output both the nations produces is cars and computers. That's it. So both nations, but not of the similar quantity. Why is it so? Because both the nations would have a different set of resources, and henceforth, both the nations, I am assuming, produce a similar type of output, cars and computers. They're only good at producing either cars and computers, but not of the same quantity. Got it? Yes. Now let's say I assume that country A, in a given period of time with the amount of resources, let's say in a span of 1 month or 1 year, let's suppose 1 month, let's suppose 1 month. Country A could produce in a span of 1 month, let's say 20 cars. 20 cars. And country B could produce in the same period, it could only produce 10 cars. Because not everyone is capable of doing things in the same time of, same period, right? Am I right? So country A, could produce 20 cars in a month, whereas country B could produce 10 cars. Got it? Whereas, if you look at when it comes to computers, let's say it could produce 30 computers and this could only produce 20 computers. 20 computers. Okay, let's say that's the maximum production possibility of those nations in the span of 1 month with a given set of resources. Am I clear? Is that matrix clear to you? Yes? Yeah. So now tell me, who is relatively more productive? Who is relatively more productive and who could produce basket of goods in a small period of time? Okay, yes? Country A, isn't it? So country A in a given period of time is capable enough to produce more cars and also more computers, isn't it? Am I right? Isn't it? So he happened to have an exact, better advantage than compared to country B in both cars and computers. And this advantage in comparison to the other nation is what I call an absolute advantage. Absolute advantage. Okay, so there are economists who said those nations that have an absolute advantage or production of a certain goods should be the one exporting those goods. Okay, than compared to have an absolute disadvantage. So the one who could afford to produce more should produce those goods and sell it to the other people. That's the simplest theory of foreign trade. Okay, but we will not discuss it as of now. We'll discuss it later. The pros and cons. Okay, the model, the problems, the assumptions, and all these things. It's a very simple model. But let's look at the other dimension. Here in this case, A has an absolute advantage over B, and hence it makes sense A producing cars and computers and selling it to B, isn't it? But let's look at the other way around. Other way around. And I will call this as, look at 20. Okay, so let's say country A. You could simply choose producing either 20 cars or 30 computers. That's why I'm saying, again, you just simply look at it. I'm not saying A could produce 20 cars and 30 computers in a month. I'm saying it is either it could produce 20 cars, 30 computers. B could either produce 10 cars, 20 computers. Is that clear now, Vedika? Sarthak? So A could produce either 20 cars in a month or 30 computers. And B could produce either 10 cars in a month or 20 computers. That's what the matrix means. But compared to B, A is always productive, either with respect to cars or computers. If A allocates all its resources to produce only cars and B does the same, but A is relatively productive than compared to B. And A allocates all its resources to produce only computers, even in such case, A still does better than B. And this is what I'm calling an absolute advantage. Absolute advantage. But let's look at the opportunity cost or the marginal rate of transformation. Opportunity cost. Got it? So let's take the case of country A. Country A. Look at it could produce either 20 cars or 30 computers. Can I equate them? 20 cars or 30 computers? Isn't it? The output is going to be either this or this. 20 cars or 30 computers. Isn't it? Output. So now can I write this as one computer of A is equal to 30 by 20, it has been 3 by 2 of a one car of A is equal to 3 by 2 of a computer. Can I write simply, sir? Am I right? Yes, Minu, following. Can I write the same thing, isn't it? So what is the opposite cost of A for one car? For every one car, isn't it? It has to forego 3 by 2 of a computers, isn't it? Am I right? You accept it? See, if I have to, so either I could produce 20 computers or 20 cars or 30 computers. So isn't it? So one car is what the 3 by 2 of a computer. Am I right? Yes or no? Or one computer is equal to 2/3 of a car. 2/3 of a car, right? Yes or no? Any confusion? 2/3 of a car. It does mean every time I want to increase my computer, isn't I need to forego 2/3 of a computers. That means if I want to go for 3 computers, I need to forego 2 cars. Isn't 3 multiplied, isn't data? So that's it. For me, that's an opportunity cost. For B, for every one car I produce, how many computers I need to forego? Yes, 2 computers, right? For B, for every one car I produce, I need to forego 2 computers. And for every one computer I need to produce, how many cars I need to forego? 0.5 cars. Isn't it? Yes or no? 0.5 cars. Is it clear now? So look at the opportunity cost of country A. For a car, it costs 3 by 2. Isn't it? 1.5 car computer. Isn't it? So 1.5 computer. So for every extra car A produces, it has to forego 3 by 2. Can I write as 1.5 computer? But for B, it has to forego 2 computers. So who has the more opportunity cost for? B has a. B happens. Who is more foregoing more in return for every extra car they produce? B, isn't it? So who has the highest opportunity cost for producing car? B. Who has the least opportunity cost for producing car? A. Is that clear now? Ajay? Isn't it? Yes. But when it comes to this, okay, 2/3, how much it is? 0.66, isn't it? 0.66 car, and this is 0.5 car, isn't it? So now tell me who has the highest and the least opportunity cost for producing a computer? Yeah, least is a B, isn't it? So B happens to have less opportunity cost for a computer, and A has a less opportunity cost for a car. Am I right? Yes or no? Is everything clear to? Okay. Now you tell me. Now you tell me, if the nations together wanna, let's say, rather than simply producing whatever they could, if the nations would like to come together, and you tell me, make a judgment, what should be produced by A and what should be produced by B? What should A produce and what do you think B should produce? So you think that A should produce a combination of both and B should produce combination of both, or you think both the nations would benefit? Both the nations would benefit if they cooperate and coordinate, and A should specialize in production of X and B should specialize in production of Y. If that is the case, you let me know. Okay, the first question I would say, will the total output and the total welfare of these two nations rise if they cooperate, or they remain separate? If they cooperate, isn't it? In such case, what do you think that A should be exporting and what do you think B should be importing? And what do you think B should be exporting and A should be importing? So take some time, no issue. Don't be in a hurry, isn't it? Yes. A should export a car, isn't it? And B should export a computer, isn't it? Or rather, A should specialize in producing cars, B should specialize in producing computers. Why is it so? Because A has a less opportunity cost, isn't it? So the absolute advantage of A is far better than B. But when it comes to opportunity cost, the number of computers I'm foregoing for every extra car is much less than compared to what my computer is foregoing. But when it comes to extra computer I produce, the number of cars I am producing is more than the number of cars that my computer is going to be, or my other country is going to forego, isn't it? Henceforth, B has less opportunity cost for producing computers. A has a less opportunity cost for producing cars. That means A could produce cars relatively at cheaper prices than B. And B could produce computers at a cheaper prices than A, isn't it? So iska matlab hai, I could teach economy relatively at cheaper price than you, because it takes more time to learn economics and more time to spend, isn't it? And henceforth, I would do the job. And what should Mahalakshmi teach me is maybe commerce, isn't it? And I already know commerce, isn't it? Maybe you might be teaching me, isn't it? Maybe some anthro or maybe some biology, isn't it? That's what I'm very bad at, isn't it? That's it. Okay. And we generally call this as a, and this is a name for the theory, and we call this as a comparative advantage theory. Comparative advantage theory. So the advantage that I have in comparison to what the other good I could produce and what the other country could produce, isn't it? So that's it. So individually, okay, I cannot say whether A is producing cars, good at producing cars or computers. But when I compare with B, A is better in producing cars, and B, when compared to A, is better in producing computers. So it makes sense. A to specialize in producing cars and B to specialize in producing computers. In such case, okay, both the nations together could increase the welfare of both the nations and together could benefit. Isn't it? Now tell me, what should be the price A has to pay and what should be the price B has to pay for its car, and that's something we'll just try to figure out. Okay, in the next class. Okay, so what should be the terms of trade? It's 3:30 to 5:30, right? Yes. Yes. Okay, that's the beauty of economics. Okay, clear. So, and we'll find out, okay, in the next class, we'll continue the discussion and find out what should be the terms of trade. So how many cars I should be willing to forego for a computer and how many computers I need to forego in return for a car, rather than me revealing it, and take this as an exercise. Now, before coming to the class, you let me know what should be the cars that A should, okay, I mean, what should be the number of cars A should be willing to forego for a computer, and what should be the computers that B should be willing to forego in return for a car. What should be the terms of trade is something, don't simply look in the internet. And of course, the same numbers, you don't find it. I have to throw some random numbers. You let me know the number of computers, cars A should forego for a computer, and the number of what should be the maximum number of computers A should forego, B should forego in return for cars. And for thus, the theory I call it a comparative advantage theory. Comparative advantage. And don't worry, again, we'll discuss and okay, repeat it the same. But I want you to let me know what should be the terms of trade. Terms of a trade. So then, okay, so A is good at exporting, producing cars. So he happened to prefer producing cars, and he prefers buying computers from a B. And B happened to specialize in producing computers, and he prefers buying cars. So I want the terms of trade. So the number of computers he would be willing to exchange in return for a car, and the number of cars he would be exchange to. What should be the ideal terms of trade? Just simply take it as a assignment. Think and look at the max. Is that clear now? Yes. Any doubts? Any doubts on that? Okay. Minu, Siddharth. So I'm not gonna simply again call by your names, but I hope at least next class, okay, I want your cameras to be turned on so that I would really get to know whether you're following or not, and be interactive. Okay. Yes. So I hope you don't have any doubts for the first class, right? We'll be doing both of the papers. Will be, yes, Ajay. Okay, we'll be doing both the papers. But what I'm saying, since second paper more or less will be covered as part of general studies, we spend more on first paper. Simultaneously, we'll be doing second paper, but relatively spend less because anyway, as part of general studies, you have no other alternative. And that's where we are spending somewhere around 80 hours, isn't it? Okay. And spending the same time, again, repeating the same doesn't make sense, isn't it? Let's go for efficient waste of time. At the end of the day, we are all economics students, right? That's it. But we'll cover both the papers. Don't worry. Sir, paper 2, will I face a problem as I'm not currently studying for GS? No, not necessary. Because anyway, I'm going to discuss about the current affairs on a daily basis. Okay. So Mansi, have you completed or you're planning to complete? Okay. Telegram link for the groups. I'll share it. Okay. Just a minute. Yeah. So the group itself I've created is so I'm just simply typing it here. Econ OPT RAUS. So economics optional RAUS. That's it. Okay. So that's the name of the group. That's it. Okay. So be part of it. Okay. And you could interact with me in this group. It's a group. Henceforth, you could freely interact with me whenever you have any doubt. Okay. And before simply posing it out, just simply try to make an attempt. And then, okay, we could freely interact with each other. Okay. So, yes. And please don't hesitate talking to me. All right. Yes. So that's for the day. We'll meet Monday, 3:30 sharp. Okay. Carry on. You welcome.